They didn't just leave her to die, they made sure she couldn't even crawl. This is the story of Arya, a Shoshone warrior woman who gave everything to protect her people, and was repaid with a blade across the knees by the very hands that once swore loyalty. They left her in the dust, legs gone, chest bare, bugs eating her alive, not even enough strength to shoo them off. Her fiancé gone. Her tribe? Gone. Her future? Erased. But fate wasn't done with her yet, and neither was rage. Out in that desert, death came sniffing, but so did a man, a broken cowboy named Malcolm Reeve. He didn't come to save her. He came chasing cattle, and found a ghost with fire still in her eyes. What happens next ain't a love story. It's a war between silence and screams, past and future, survival and surrender. And one of them will have to bleed again for both to keep breathing. Let's ride. Before we begin, hit subscribe and drop a 1 in the comments if you believe no human deserves to be discarded like trash. If you don't like the story, do us a favor and smash that like button in protest. But whatever you do, stay till the end. There's a twist coming that'll punch you in the gut. Malcolm didn't say a word when he saw her. Not at first. She was barely human anymore. What was left of her twisted body lay wedged between two rocks like roadkill that had the audacity to keep breathing. Her skin was cracked, blistered, shredded by wind and heat. What was once a warrior's dress had been burned, clinging to her ribs like rags. But it was her eyes that made him pause. Not from pity, not even from shock. He saw fire. Somewhere behind that half-dead face was a refusal to quit. He should have turned around. Every bone in his body told him to ride away. But he didn't. He dropped to one knee, slid his arms beneath her, and felt her bones grind against each other. Her skin was hot with infection. Her breath came in wet, ragged stutters. One of her arms moved, just barely, and gripped a rock. Like she didn't want to be carried, like she still thought she had a say. "You're gonna die out here," he muttered. She didn't answer. He took her anyway. The ride back to his homestead was long, hot, and silent. He cradled her in one arm, the other hand guiding the reins. Flies landed on her face. He brushed them away. Her head lolled against his shoulder, leaving a smear of blood. Her body twitched once. He almost stopped, but she didn't cry out. By the time they reached the shack, his shirt was soaked, her lips cracked, and her legs, or what remained, had turned a color that made him curse under his breath. The sight of her stumps, seeping through crude wrappings of animal hide, made his stomach twist. But he didn't flinch. He'd seen worse, or so he thought. He laid her on the cot inside. The room reeked of blood and dust. The floor creaked when he moved. He fetched water, boiled cloth, tore up an old linen shirt into strips. When he peeled away the filthy wrappings, she didn't scream, just stared at him with eyes that refused to close. In those first hours, Malcolm did what had to be done. No prayers, no comfort, just salt, water, sap, and grit. He poured the boiling cloth over the wounds, packed them with crushed pine, and pressed down. Her whole body jerked, and her hand gripped the edge of the cot until her knuckles turned bone white. But still, not a single cry. That night, she passed out. He didn't sleep, just watched her chest rise and fall, counting every breath like it might be the last. In the quiet, a storm brewed inside him. Rage. Not at her. Not at her people. At the sheer damn cruelty of it all. What kind of tribe leaves their own to rot like an animal? What kind of world punishes the brave and spares the cowards? He remembered war, remembered watching men choke on their own blood, praying for mercy. But none of it felt as sickening as the sight of this woman, chewed up by cannon fire and tossed aside like a broken tool. He found himself pacing the floor. His hip throbbed from an old bullet wound. His breath came shallow. He was angry, but he didn't know at who. Maybe at himself for not walking away. But when he looked at her again, he knew. This wasn't a rescue. It was a reckoning. In the days to follow, he cleaned her wounds again and again. He didn't ask her name. She didn't give it. But one night, as he was lighting the oil lamp, she croaked out a word, broken and dry. Why? He paused, hand still near the flame. You didn't leave, she whispered. He didn't answer right away, just stood in the dim glow, face unreadable. Then he spoke, voice gravel thick. 'Cause you're still breathing. That was the first night she cried. Not loud, not messy. Just tears. Real, human, silent. She turned her face to the wall, and he let her have her privacy. The next morning, she tried to crawl. Her palms bled. She didn't ask for help, and he didn't offer. But that night, he started building something. Wood, wheels, cloth, steel. She would not be a ghost in that bed. She would move. She would fight again. The next morning came with wind, hot, dry, and pushing dust under the door cracks like a warning. Arya sat upright for the first time since the blast, her torso propped by Malcolm's folded blanket and the crooked chair leg he'd cut short for balance. Her arms ached, her skin flaked, and her mouth tasted like rust. But she moved. Just a little. Enough to feel the ache in her abs and the rage crawl back under her ribs. Rage didn't leave. Not anymore. It sat in her chest, right next to the memory of her brother's face as he swung the blade. He cried when he cut her. She remembered that. But he still cut. Still left. That was the part she couldn't forgive. Not the pain, not the abandonment. But the fact that he had looked her in the eyes and did it anyway. Now here she was, breathing air she wasn't supposed to still taste. When Malcolm stepped into the cabin, carrying an armful of chopped kindling, he didn't greet her. He didn't have to. She was upright. That said enough. He set the wood down quietly, wiped his hands on his trousers, and moved to the stove. The silence between them wasn't cold. It had weight, the kind that didn't need filling. She watched him light the fire, pour water, and move like a man who'd carried grief longer than a saddle. Her eyes tracked every movement. Not because she didn't trust him, but because he was the first man since the blast who hadn't looked at her with either pity or revulsion. Her scars were visible now, the crude stitching, the burned patches on her chest. She didn't cover them anymore. Let them look. Let him look. You live here alone? She asked, voice rough like broken slate. He nodded, slow. You could have left me. I didn't. There was a pause that could have held an avalanche. Then she said it, straight, sharp. They said they'd come back. They never did. Malcolm didn't blink. They never do. The next hour passed in shared labor. He pulled the rolling platform into the center of the room. She studied it like a weapon. It was rough, nailed from salvaged boards, and the frame of an old dining chair with makeshift wheels that squeaked when touched. You made this? She asked. He shrugged. I don't beg, she warned. You didn't. He lifted her from the cot, hands firm beneath her back and under what was left of her legs. Her body tensed, but she didn't resist. As he set her down on the platform, she gritted her teeth. Not from pain, but from shame. Shame that her body was now something that needed lifting, not standing. But when her palms touched the side rails and her arms began to pull, even if it was just inches, she felt something shift. Not pride, not hope, not yet. Just fire. Anger that she was still here, and that maybe that meant she was supposed to do something with it. By afternoon, she'd made it to the doorframe on her own. Malcolm had gone outside to hammer boards to the west-facing wall. When he returned, sweat clinging to his neck, he found her slumped halfway between the chair and the basin. Her body shook. Her breath was shallow. Her eyes blazed. I'm not going to rot in that bed, she said through clenched teeth. He didn't speak, just stepped forward and lifted her again, carried her back to the cot, then left without a word. That night, the air hung heavy. Somewhere out by the ridge, a coyote howled, long and lonely. Inside the barn, Malcolm hammered wood under the yellow flicker of an oil lamp. This time, he wasn't building something for her to rest in. He was building something for her to move with. He sawed through an old barrel, fitted it with harness loops, and tied rope pulleys to the walls of the cabin. A makeshift lift. Crude, but solid. He wasn't just helping her survive. He was making damn sure the world didn't forget she was still here, And when dawn broke, and she saw what he'd built, she didn't smile. Not really. But her fingers gripped the rail tighter. She was ready to move again. Because if the world wanted to erase her, she was going to carve herself back into it, scar by scar, inch by inch, until they remembered her name. It wasn't the pain that broke her. It was the fever. It crept in one night, slow and cunning, like the blade of betrayal that had first taken her legs. One moment, Arya was pulling herself from wall to wall in that little one-room cabin, chest heaving but determined. The next, she was burning from the inside out. Her breath came shallow, her hands trembled. She tasted iron in her mouth and felt her mind begin to unravel. Malcolm noticed it before she did. He heard her muttering in Shoshone, not the sharp syllables she used to curse or taunt, but broken, desperate words. Names, please, prayers maybe. Her body was slick with sweat, her eyes rolled back, her fingers clutched at nothing. And still, even in that state, she refused to scream. He didn't wait. He soaked cloth in cold water, held it to her forehead, brewed crushed willow bark, and forced it down her throat between clenched teeth. She fought him, spat, flinched, bit at his hand. But he didn't stop. When the fever peaked, she clawed at him like an animal, digging her nails into his arm as her body convulsed. He stayed, locked her wrists in his calloused hands and whispered, "Breathe. You're not dying here. Not in my house." Her skin burned, her lips cracked. Her eyes, when they opened, looked right through him, as if she were back in that ravine, back with the ants, back in the dirt where no one came. Then came a whisper, "Tana." It was the only word she repeated, over and over. A name. A ghost. Malcolm didn't know what it meant, but he didn't ask. Some names aren't for questioning. Some are just scars you don't see. She broke the fever by morning. Her face was pale, drenched, her breathing shallow but real. When she opened her eyes, the light hit her differently, not with mercy, but with memory. "You stayed," she rasped. "I wasn't planning to run," Malcolm said, and he meant it. But the world wasn't going to wait for her to heal. 2 days later, a rider came up the trail. Not fast, not loud, just steady. A thin man on a mule, long coat dusty, a battered hat pulled low. Malcolm watched from the edge of the barn. His fingers drifted near the rifle slung over a fence post. Arya, perched near the cabin's side window, saw him too. Her eyes narrowed. The man dismounted, nodded like he knew this place, knew something was inside it. "Marshal from Copper Ridge sent me," he called. "Said there's been movement. Cavalry stirring up old trouble east of here." Malcolm didn't answer. The man smiled, a little too knowingly. "We're looking for a woman, Shoshone. Name's been passed around. Rumor says she lived." Arya stayed out of sight, but her fingers twitched. She reached under the blanket and found the knife Malcolm had left for her a week back. "Just in case." "You live out here alone?" the man asked, eyes scanning the land. Malcolm didn't blink. "Quiet suits me." The man tipped his hat, but the air felt colder after he left. "That wasn't a visit. That was a warning." Arya wheeled herself into the center of the room, breath sharp. "They know." "They always did," Malcolm replied. "But now they're coming." He didn't argue. That night, he showed her the trapdoor, hidden under the rug beneath the table. Not deep, but enough. He'd built it after the fever, in silence, like all his work. She looked at him. "You built this for me." He nodded. She touched the edge of the door, then looked up. "I'll fight for this place," she said. "I don't care what name they put on me." He didn't smile, just met her eyes and said, "Then I'll fight beside you." The wind howled through the rafters that night. The oil lamp burned low. And for the first time since she was left bleeding in that ravine, Arya didn't feel hunted. She felt dangerous. Let them come. She wasn't hiding anymore. By the third day, the waiting itself became war. Neither Arya nor Malcolm said it out loud, but both of them felt it. The air had changed, not in temperature but in pressure, like a storm just beyond the ridge, unseen but undeniable. The visit from the scout hadn't been routine. It was a recon pass, a test. And if they were smart, they'd know what they'd seen. A broken woman behind a wall, and a man ready to kill. Malcolm cleaned his rifle twice that day. His hands moved slow, methodical, not nervous, just ready. He oiled the bolt, counted rounds, stashed extra shells under the floorboards. Arya didn't ask questions. She was too busy sewing leather strips into a sling for the knife he'd given her. The movement hurt her ribs, pulled on the healing scar along her flank. But she didn't stop. "This isn't just about hiding anymore," she muttered that night. "It's about drawing a line." Malcolm, hammer in hand, looked up from reinforcing the barn door. "You already did," he said. "The day you didn't die." At dawn, the knock didn't come. The voice did. "Arizona Marshal's office. We're here on official order. Step out." Two men, mounted, uniformed. One held a rifle, the other a folded paper, his voice clipped, too smooth to be a stranger to hunting people. Inside, Arya was already beneath the floor, lying in the dark like a hunted fox. Straw itched her skin. Her chest rose and fell with measured control. She gripped the knife tight across her chest, just in case the boards failed. Malcolm stepped out slow. Didn't raise the gun, but didn't hide it either. "What's the charge?" he asked. "We have reason to believe you're harboring a fugitive," the soldier said. "A native woman involved in a hostile act against territorial forces. We're authorized to search." "You got a warrant?" The soldier held up the paper. "This is from the marshal himself." "That's not what I asked." A long pause. Then Boots dismounted. They moved through the cabin, eyes scanning. Malcolm didn't flinch. He stood still as iron, but his muscles were tight like a loaded spring. One soldier glanced at the stove, the bed, the rifle by the door. The other opened the barn, looked around. But they didn't check the rug, didn't lift the floorboards, didn't see her. When they left, one of them looked back, squinting toward the chicken coop. "You sure no one's passed by?" "I ain't seen anyone," Malcolm replied, voice flat. They rode off, not slow, not fast, just with the kind of pace that meant they'd be back. Malcolm waited a full hour before lifting the trapdoor. The moment it opened, the smell of sweat and earth hit him. Arya looked up, eyes red but sharp. He pulled her out carefully. She didn't speak, didn't cry, just rested her forehead against his chest. "I'm tired of being hunted," she said. "You're not," he replied. "Not anymore." That night, they didn't reinforce anything. They didn't hide. Instead, Arya cut the hem from one of Malcolm's old shirts and sewed a sash. Thick black thread, jagged but deliberate, stitched a single word across it. "Still." She tied it around her chest, over the scars, the missing flesh, the curve of what remained. She wore it like it was armor. When Malcolm saw it, he didn't comment, just nodded once. He understood. Later, they lay in the cot, not tangled in fear, but in something stronger. Not hope exactly, but a decision. Her head on his chest, his fingers curled around hers. "You ever want children?" she asked suddenly, staring at the ceiling. "I had a daughter once," he said. "She died in the fire. She was 2. Silence again. "I can't have any," she whispered. "The doctor said, after what they did to me." He didn't flinch, just brushed a hand over her cheek. "You're still everything." That night, neither of them dreamed. There was no need. They were already living the part no one believed they'd reach. Not dead, not lost. Still. The 4th morning after the soldiers left, Arya was up before Malcolm. She sat wrapped in the thick woven blanket she'd stitched herself, perched on the porch as the first light cut across the valley. The world looked unchanged. Cattle by the fence, hawks overhead, dust dancing above dry grass. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. Not in the land, in her. She was no longer just alive. She was present. She belonged. When Malcolm stepped outside, barefoot and half-dressed, he didn't ask why she was awake. He simply sat beside her, knees touching, arms resting on his thighs. The silence was easy now, earned. "They're not coming back," she said quietly. "No," he replied. "Not the same ones." She looked at him, and for a moment there was peace, but it didn't last. By midday, a rider approached from the ridge. New boots, polished gun belt, the kind of man who didn't belong out here unless he came with questions or orders. Arya wheeled herself behind the porch wall. Her hand gripped the hidden blade strapped beneath her blanket. Malcolm stood still, gaze hard. The man dismounted slow. "Name's Harlan," he called. "Heard a story out of Yuma. A woman, Warrior kind. Got cut up bad and survived near Copper Ridge. You seen anyone like that? Malcolm didn't answer. Harlan's eyes flicked toward the coop, the porch. Word is there's bounty money on her. Doesn't matter if she's walking or not. Just matters she's breathing. Behind the wall, Arya didn't tremble. She gritted her teeth and waited. Her heart wasn't pounding with fear. It pulsed with something colder. She'd kill him if she had to. Malcolm stepped forward then, rifle low but not slack. She's under my roof, he said flatly. And she stays. Harlan smirked, hand drifting near his pistol. That a threat, rancher? No, Malcolm said. That's a fact. For a second, the wind dropped. Dust hung still in the air, and death felt as close as the gunmetal glint on Harlan's hip. You draw, Malcolm warned. You die. Harlan didn't test him. He pulled his reins, turned his horse, and rode off with a muttered curse. But no one believed that was the end of it. That night, Arya didn't sleep. She sat near the fire, weaving thin strips of leather with steady fingers. Malcolm thought it was distraction. Then he saw what she was making. A sheath rig, designed to strap a knife to her chest, hidden under her shirt. You think I can't fight? She asked without looking up. I think you shouldn't have to, he said. But I might, she whispered. And he didn't argue. 2 nights later, after dinner, she rolled beside him, eyes sharp. I don't need fixing, she said. I just want you. He didn't move. Just let her pull him down, let her guide his hands to the parts of her she could still feel. The scars, the soft flesh, the places where she'd been remade by fire and pain. He didn't flinch, and when she straddled him, body trembling with effort, he held her like she wasn't missing a thing. Afterward, curled on his chest, she asked, You ever dream of starting over? Every day since I found you. The next morning, they left the ranch together for the first time. Malcolm hitched the wagon. Arya crawled into the bed of blankets, arms braced, jaw tight. They rode west toward a creek he'd once taken his daughter to, before the fire. I used to sit right here, he said. Watch her chase frogs. She'd have liked me? Arya asked. She'd have been terrified, he chuckled. But only for a minute. They sat there under the cottonwood tree until the sun dropped. When they returned home, Arya cooked, real food, burnt, salty, defiant. Malcolm ate every bite like it was a feast. That night, as he lifted her into the cot, she grabbed his arm and pulled him down beside her. You're not sleeping in that damn chair again? He didn't resist. As the fire died low, she pressed her hand to his chest, palm steady over his heart. Do you regret it? She asked. He didn't need to answer, because by now they both knew. They weren't survivors. They were resurrected, together. And this time, they were choosing to stay. This story reminds us that survival is not just about breathing. It's about reclaiming dignity after being discarded. Arya was broken, betrayed, left for dead. Yet she chose to fight, inch by inch, scar by scar. And Malcolm, a man hollowed by grief, found purpose not in saving her, but in standing beside her. Together, they built something not out of perfection, but defiance. The lesson? Love rooted in respect, not pity, is stronger than blood. And even when the world turns its back, choosing to stay, to protect, to believe, is the most radical act of humanity.